let's just sew whatever. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are making the Diorz book tote from Tobi Stylx. This is part of their designer series of handbags. So they have created several patterns based on designer bags that you all know and love and maybe want to kind of dupe and have some fun with. And this one is absolutely no exception. She reached out to me several months ago that she was working on this, and I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. I really like this shape and style of this, and then forgot about it and just finished. But I would absolutely recommend using mid-weight to thin accessory weight vinyls for this. The Luxe that I used was pretty thick and it made these corners hard to sew. But I absolutely loved the way this came together. I think it's so little, it's dainty. I think if you made this one like really big, it would be fun. But I hope you will enjoy cutting and sewing this with me. Let's get started. I'm super excited to make this. It's not something I've made before, but I absolutely love the look of it. So I've got my materials picked out here. I've got a water resistant canvas for the lining. I have a mid-weight printed vinyl for the exterior and binding panel, and then I've got this thicker, this is a Luxe vinyl from my website. All the materials are from my website, for the gusset panel, handle panel, those kinds of things. And then we're going to be using Decaville Heavy, Decaville Light for the interfacing of the bag, but I'm super excited for this combination. So we're going to get started on cutting out the main panel. There is a cut chart within the pattern. There are no pattern pieces. So I always like to state when that is the case, because I've had a handful of people reach out to me over the last couple of years, just to mention like, hey, I'm not good with a ruler and I don't like patterns without pieces, and that's totally understandable. So the main panel is just a square, so that's pretty awesome. No need to be worried about cutting it wrong. I am using an 18 by 18 ruler from my website. Well, no, we don't sell these on the website, but we sell other rulers. So there's that. What's fun about this being a square is that it doesn't matter which way it goes in the end. So I thought it might be nice to use this mid-weight vinyl for this project so that it doesn't get too bulky, especially with the binding, etc. And then as I am cutting things, I'm just marking them off on the cutting chart. So the gusset panel I plan on doing with a contrast fabric, so I'm going to skip that. The binding panel I think is going to be perfect for this mid-weight. Keep in mind I do have an industrial sewing machine, so that right there makes it much easier for me to sew with different vinyls. So just keep that in mind for your machine. So this is a number bigger than the ruler I'm using, but I can just grab another ruler. Oh wow, that's actually really perfect. This is one part of the bag I'm actually most excited for. I think it's going to be a super fun challenge for sure. Okay, so that is the two binding panels, and then we need our handle panel, which I think is actually the handle, and I do want that to be the thicker contrast vinyl. So we have our main lining, our gusset lining, and our slip pocket. There's the scarf panel, which I'm actually considering skipping. I'll look at my cotton fabrics and see what I have that I think would coordinate well enough, but I'm not sure I have anything, and I'd want it to have like a nice drape to it, and most of my cottons are thicker canvases. So we can do the slip pocket binding. That's just a little piece. And the slip pocket binding is cut wider than needed. And then because I know how I'm going to attach this and I have double-sided tape at my cutting table, I'm just going to save myself some time for when I get to my machine. I'm going to apply that right now, because why not? And then I also have a seam roller here. One thing I've noticed with double-sided tape is that if you notice you struggle with peeling it off, it's likely because you haven't fully adhered it, like you haven't pressed it all the way down, and that can make a huge difference. So gusset panel, handle panel, scarf panel. I'm just gonna question mark the scarf panel. Slip pocket is gonna be lining, lining, lining. Main interfacing, gusset interfacing. So this is like insanely quick to cut out. I'm gonna be done before we know it. Like, this is cool. The instructions seem pretty straightforward, and there's extremely minimal hardware. Like, there's not even a zipper. So if you're very new to bag making, this might be kind of fun. Like, maybe you've made a quilt before, so you're familiar with binding. This could potentially be a winner for you. All right, so I am using this thicker vinyl for the gusset. This is a colorway that has not released on my website yet, but I absolutely love it, and I think it matches the watercolor rose print perfectly. It's a 24-inch ruler. Just coming down from that. So I don't have any tubing that is requested in the pattern, so I'm gonna just try and do like a faux rolled handle and see what that looks like. Handle. Oh yeah, I thought I had picked out some webbing. The pattern calls for a strip of webbing, but I wonder if potentially I could just cut it out of this vinyl, but I may even leave it off. I don't see it in the pile of things that I grabbed. This color was part of the adventure box that we just released, so this isn't available on the website yet, but I believe it's called Calypso. But if you purchase waterproof, water resistant canvas from me, the wrong side of the fabric has like a whitish hue to it when you scratch it. So if you're unsure, that's your tell. This fabric does fray, like it's not a non-fraying material, so keep that in mind. There's one lining piece. There is the other. Gusset lining, and then our slip pocket. So I'll go ahead and cut out my slip pocket since it's the same measurement here. And what's good about the water resistant canvas is that it's going to be thin enough that I can do a pocket like this. Sometimes with waterproof canvas, it's just way too much, because this is just going to be like a fold in half, flip it type slip pocket with the binding on top. And then we've got our gusset lining piece, which is a little bit smaller on purpose because your exterior folds down inside the bag, becoming like a top lining piece. So that's pretty cool. And then I've got this nice straight edge straight-ish edge that I can cut that gusset from. And then if you do not have a ruler or a set of rulers long enough, you can actually cut items on the fold that's equal to half the measurement you need. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this on the fold. I'm going to start with a straight line to cut off any uneven excess, and then I'm going to move this over to the width that I need. So these rulers are a little bit confusing to people. They're like, why does it say 71, 52? It's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in opposite directions. So you just find the measurement you need, and then it's not like dependent on the direction you're cutting, because I've had rulers that I have to like flip around in several directions, and I'm like, I just want to know what I need from this direction. Please and thank you. Okay, so that's my gusset lining, and then I'm gonna use Decaville Heavy for the main interfacing, and then the gusset interfacing is Decaville Light. I'm actually gonna use, well, I'll use the Decaville Light, but I was debating on just using my tried and true Sophie's Plus because it's so inexpensive and I don't know, feels like a safer option because it's cheaper. So I'll go ahead and grab my interfacing, I'll get that cut, and we're ready to sew. All right, I've got my Decaville Light here, and this piece is cut out of your seam allowances. You don't want too rigid of a gusset, or it's going to be really hard to work with. So there's that piece. And then we need 2 of the main interfacing, and that's going to be our Decaville Heavy. That is a horse upstairs. Not really. It's my husband. So full disclosure, I have not read over the pattern in its entirety, but my assumption is that you're going to stabilize this half an inch or so from the sides, and then this, once it's folded over, has that structure needed there. So just double check the pattern before you fuse it, and then same with the gusset. You're going to be centering it and fusing it that way, because then this folds over on itself and you've got plenty of structure there. So yeah, that's the bag cut. We got all of our pieces, except for that scarf panel, which I'm still unsure of. And then there's the little piece of binding, but all of those are like add-ons. They're to help make it look more like a designer copycat, but they're not completely necessary to completing the bag. This pattern looks super easy, so I'm super excited. I am absolutely exhausted and excited for a quick, satisfying sew and something I've never really made before. So we're going to start off with the slip pocket. This is going to be one of our longer lining pieces in this small little strip of vinyl. So we're going to fold it right sides together, sew along both sides at 1/4 inch seam allowances, snip the edges, and then flip it. And then we're going to add the pocket trim. So super easy. Easy, easy, easy. So I'm using this water resistant canvas lining from my website. I did a little scrape so that I could find which one was the wrong side, and it has this whitish cast to it. So that's how I know it's the wrong side. Ooh, I definitely need to change my thread color. I'll do that in a minute. So 1/4 inch seam allowance. Turn your machine on, that'll make a huge difference. The way the instructions are written, it says to, oh, I changed my thread, then I got distracted. It's very similar to how we're going to be adding the binding, so it's up to you if you want to do this method written in the pattern, or if you just want to use double-sided tape and attach to both sides. But essentially you draw a line 1/2 inch down from the long edge of the slip pocket trim, sew that in place, and then sew that down and then flip it over so you have a finished edge that's sewn on and like technically no raw edges to that vinyl. But I know that my vinyl will be fine if it's raw edged, so just gonna do it. Just gonna sew it down. And this is cut quite a bit longer than you need it to be. So we're just going to fold that over top edge. And you can trim away any of that excess. And you could even slip a little woven label under here if you wanted. I just have bags and bags full of labels. I'm sure you guys all feel the same way. That's empty, so I need to fill it. I just haven't had time to organize. I'm going to put this one that says, "I'm handcrafted. Take care of me." And so I'm going to start at the edge that I know I'm going to cut the excess off of and backstitch. Fold that in. There is definitely something loose in the mechanism of my pedal, like I can feel it. I'm sure you guys can hear it too, actually. Okay. So then we can go ahead and just trim off the excess. Be careful not to cut through your thread, your stitches. So now we're gonna lay the lining piece right side up 1.5 inches from the top edge. So the visual is from another pattern, it looks like, so that might be confusing if you're like, wait, I don't have boxed corners. As far as I know, this pattern doesn't have boxed corners. So we're gonna do 1.5 inches from the top edge, centered, and that gives us like 1/4 inch on the bottom. Okay. And then that's gonna be about 1.25 inches from the sides. Yes. Okay. Look right into it, aren't I? I know I'm gonna need this in a minute, so I'm just gonna set it here. But I'm gonna top stitch this Pac-Man style, where I'm gonna go down, up and around. Do you wanna lay there? Is it not hospitable for you? Hold, please. So like I said, I'm gonna do Pac-Man style. I'm gonna start at the top. And then I'm just doing 1 stitch over, coming down, back stitching, going around again. If you wanted to make it a sectioned slip pocket, you could absolutely add some little dividing lines. I'm gonna have my husband come down here and look while I'm sewing because I don't like this noise. Okay, so there's that all stitched in place. We are going to move on to our handles now. And this piece, we're gonna mark the center. Yes, I had to do the math there. So it's going to be 1.75 for the center of this handle. Make a mark. I do not have the tubing required, so I'm going to try to do more of a faux rolled handle and see what that looks like. So I'm going to fold the edges. I really should like have that turned the other way. My goodness. My goodness. So I'm just adding 1/4 inch wide double-sided tape to each side. I'm going to fold it into the center. If I can't do a faux rolled handle, I think I'll be okay with this. But essentially what the pattern says to do is you would fold this in half and just top stitch this edge and then fold in the tubing. And I don't really have any tubing, nor do I have experience with said tubing. So I think I would in the future cut the handles to maybe like 3 inches wide and do a 3/4 inch wide handle. But this is just slightly over 3/4 inch, so not too bad. Or you could potentially try to cut it to 1.5 inches wide. Fold your long raw edges into the center And then just do like so from here to here, and then you'd have that little bit open within your seam, but it gets sewn again, so like it would look good, I think. But I'm gonna go ahead and sew all 4 sides of these straps. I do have a solid color thread in my binding. Nope. Bobbin. Okay, that's really fun. So I've got the fairy floss from Wizardry on one side and then just regular purple on the other. So I think I might have just the purple on the outside maybe. And then have the fairy floss be like a little fun pop on the inside. And I'm just going slowly around all 4 sides, stopping with my needle in, pivoting, and going around to the other side. I feel like sometimes people don't realize to do that, but you want to try and start and stop in the same place if you can when you're sewing a strap. They don't always look beautiful, but like it's going to be the back side of it's going to be hidden in the seam, so I'm not too worried about it. All right, so that is our handle. So now we're going to attach the handle and install the magnetic snap. So we're going to lay the main panel right side down. Oh, and fuse your interfacing. We already did that. And we're going to use double-sided tape to hold down the main lining to the main panel. 2.5 inches from the top edge. 2 inches. I think that's just laying it down, basically. So I'll go ahead and start with my pocket piece. Yeah, that's just laying it in place like so, and then you can use double-sided tape so things don't shift. This is finished with binding on the outside of the bag, so we don't have to turn anything, which will be really nice. And then you want to make sure that your stabilizer is along the bottom. So here's our 2 inches up here. And we're going to fold the top edge of the main panel to meet the lining. Okay, like right on it maybe, because then I think it gets folded again. I mean, either way, I'm just thrilled with the color combo right now. Okay, so we're literally just gonna flip it over. Here is that top edge that's folded. We're gonna find our center and attach a magnetic snap 1/2 inch from that top edge and centered. So you could use a thin magnetic snap or whatever size. You could use 14 or an 18. Like it does the pattern, it does say, but it says to use a 1/2 inch magnetic snap. So that's like 13 millimeter. I'm using one that's a little bit bigger. I'm using 18 millimeter, so that might just make top stitching a little bit harder. But essentially, from what I'm understanding of the pattern, is we're going to just fully attach this with the right side of the magnetic snap on what is currently the exterior, but won't be for long. And you could even use those riveted magnetic snaps if you wanted. Okay, and then we're going to do that on the other side, and then we're going to draw another line that's 2 inches from the top edge and fold over to meet that top edge. And it says that this one will be seen, so make sure you use like an erasable pen. But basically we're folding this down 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is just make 2 little marks on the side here and fold it down to meet that. But you're kind of just folding it on itself. And this is why you don't use a ton of stabilizer. So that's really fun. I'm really, really happy with my vinyl choice on this, the mid-weight vinyl that I offer on my website, because like this with anything else might be way too thick. Because right now we are pretty much the same height and width as our Decoville. At this point, if you want to add a metal name tag or something, please do before you fully secure your lining to that. We're going to take one of our handles, and then keep in mind that this is going to get like folded up and top stitched, because this is supposed to be inside the bag. So however you want it to look on the outside, you want that facing up. So let's see, this is going to be 2.5 inches from the side edge inside that seam by, fold the wrong side, sew the fold at 1/4 inch. It doesn't really say how far to put the strap in, but I don't know that I want to go super far in. But whatever you do on one side, you want to do on the other. So keep that in mind. Okay, yeah. Because then this is going to get flipped up and top stitched, or not top stitched, but riveted through. So they should be facing inside the bag at the moment. So we're just going to repeat all those steps to the other side. And like, you probably don't believe me, but we're almost done. No, we're not almost done, but like the exterior is really coming together. I'm gonna add a nameplate. So I feel like lately I've been forgetting to add nameplates to bags. Like I haven't made bags to sell in a while. All right. You could also use like a laser engraved nameplate, something like that. It's fun. This is like oh no, it's a magnet. Well, yeah, it's a magnet. It's a magnet. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I thought that was the right washer. Dorothy? Just scratching to make sure that this is the correct side of my lining. All right, so I will go ahead and use double-sided tape this time. I was a little skeptical because I'm like, wait, what are we doing? So just to keep that from shifting. And this is literally just going to line up with the top edge of our lining. If you needed to measure that, it's probably a 2-inch line that you'd make and then fold to. And then we're going to flip this over and 1/2 inch and centered. Is where we're going to mark for the magnetic snap to go. Using about a 14mm if you can. I do carry 14mm magnetic snap on my website currently. In the thin magnetic snaps. I feel like I'm super old school because I use the thick ones so much. And I'm like, we have found better options. But I like what I like. Okay. So there's that, and then I'll make that 2-inch mark. But keep in mind, this is just under that seam, so don't make a line that's too obvious. And then you could use double-sided tape here too, actually, if you wanted. I might. And then keep in mind, you also have to add your handles. So I might measure and mark those now. And those are going to go 2.5 in. And then I want the rainbow side down. Okay, cool. So I'm going to peel my tape. I'm going to affix my tape first. There we go. And this is going to go inside the 2.5 inch lines. Fold this down to meet. Things are shifting. I would say if things are shifting, let your lining fall to the bottom. Don't let it bunch up because you've got it secure under there. You don't want the shifting to be at the top. Ooh, maybe you don't want any shifting at all, because then your 2-inch line is skewed. We're gonna find out. Okay, so now we are going to fold these handles up and top stitch. I think it's super cute. Keep in mind your machine's capabilities and the materials you're using for these handles. I personally think they'd be super cute as webbing, especially since we're sewing through it and then riveting again. So you want to make sure you're using at least a 9mm post, if not 9 by 12. So I'm going to go ahead and punch these holes and rivet these into place. One thing I would recommend is to mark maybe 1/4 or 1/2 inch down, mark or poke that hole, and then fold your handle up and make a mark through that hole onto your handle, especially if you're using a handheld hole punch. It's a lot of layers to go through, but you can see I just marked through that hole. I have a hole there that I can then punch through with a handheld press. Just make sure you use 2 hands. Oh, and then we'll add the post through the back. That's my preference. And then up through the front there. And then we'll add the cap. So you can see there how cute that looks. So again, I'm kind of flipping that handle up. I'm going to mark where I want my holes to be on the exterior fabric. Go ahead and punch that hole. And you don't want to use holes that are too large for your rivets, or you'll risk them popping out. Okay, so I made that mark and I'm folding this down, marking through the vinyl, making sure all my layers sit nicely. And if you are someone who likes measurements, that's about 1 inch down from this folded line. So I would say about 1/4 inch from the top edge centered and 1 inch down there. And I will say we've had a very high defect rate on these hole punches, but just make sure that you're never going through more than 4 layers of your vinyl at a time, and then don't go through much webbing. Webbing is just so dense that these handheld hole punches are just not meant to go through that. You could risk kind of breaking the mechanism. So if you have issues with one, please email us. We don't want you to have a product that doesn't work and that you are mad you bought. So yeah. Once our exteriors are done, we're going to move on to our gusset pieces. I'm totally using mixed metals for this bag. I have light gold rivets and rainbow nameplate. Then you can just kind of see here how it closes together. I'm going to do a quick run around sewing the sides of this. Yeah, I can. I was like, can I? Yeah. Just going to baste my lining down. I don't want it shifting. I'm not too sure why the pocket has to be folded on that bottom edge, because it's going to get caught in our seam anyway, but I don't think it's too big of an issue. So there's that. And then depending on which side you want to sew from, and then you can trim your lining to match a little better if there was any shifting. All right. So there's some excess there. I'm just going to trim that down. That's nice. Now we're going to line up the lining of our gusset 2 inches from each top edge. This. And you can use tape. I'm going to use clips right now. But you could, I mean, potentially you could baste it in place. And then we're going to make 2 lines. One that's at 2 inches, but I mean, that's just to the top edge of your fabric, your lining. And then one at 3 inches, and just make sure that that one isn't too obvious, because that's where we're going to then fold down again, just like we did on the front panel. So I'm just making little marks for now. And then I think I'm actually going to baste the side edges so there's no shifting, and then I'm going to fold it. Okay, so I've added double-sided tape to the 2-inch line, which is basically just folding it to meet the edge of your lining, and then you're going to fold all of that over again, similarly to the exterior, to meet the 3-inch line. And then we'll top stitch that 1/4 of an inch from that folded edge. And then I'll repeat that on the other side. So we're going to repeat that on the other side. And then fold down to the line. the other side, and top stitch 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch from that folded edge. So now we're just going to be putting these pieces with lining sides together, which feels very like not what I'm used to, but since this is finished with binding on the exterior, that's the way it is. So I'm going to start by lining up the sides and then figuring out how the bottom panel is going to work. And we're going to sew all this together at 1/4 of an inch just to get it into place. So once I have the sides, I'm just folding up to meet to kind of make a square bottom. And then I may add a teeny tiny little snip into the corner to make it really fit where it needs to. Like this. And then just literally just a 1/4 inch little snip. So that way I can get those corners nice and crisp. Make sure your top edges are lined up and then sew all the way around that. I'm adding a clip at the topmost edge there too, so that they don't shift there on me. I'm going to sew down to about 1/4 of an inch and lift up and pivot. And then I'm going to use my screwdriver to push the seam in the other direction to really make that crisp corner. Repeat that on the other side. So my needle hits that little snip and then I pivot. Go back up. And then we can repeat that on the other side and then we'll work on adding our binding. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that on the other side. This one's a little bit more difficult. We've got a lot of thick materials and then we've got the Decaville Heavy and Decaville Light kind of fighting against us. I'm going to backstitch at the beginning. And then you really just want to make sure that your edges stay lined up. And then I'm sewing down. And then pivoting. All right, and then we're going to be adding binding. You just want to double check that you've got all the seams caught. Luckily, the binding is going to be much more secure, but I do feel like that's going to be a challenge because everything fits so perfectly together at the moment. I feel like you almost need a little more give in these corners, but we shall see. Now that we have our bag, look, it's so cute. We're going to grab our binding piece and we're going to measure a line 1 inch down the middle and from each short edge. And this is definitely something you can do at your cut table when you cut the bag out. I feel like I would absolutely want to make one of these again. I can't say that I would, only because I haven't had a ton of time to sew, but I could see myself making these, and I could see myself adding a like a D-ring connector, even just a little one, or like a 3/4 inch triangle ring or something like that in the gusset seam on the lining, to make it a crossbody, or add like a really cute little chain strap. I think it'd be super cute. Something similar is the transponster from Sincerely Jen, but I do feel like they're different enough, and this one has more of a square than rectangular proportion than the transponster. Okay. We're going to use some double-sided tape. This is actually a really cool way of doing binding that I'm glad I have this pattern for. But so for one side of the bag, we're going to like finish the top edge, we're going to finish one side, and then we're going to sew it to the bag and then flip it and have a finished edge to top stitch down. So we're going to fold this down to meet the 1 inch line. You want to make sure you have some good double-sided tape, and then I'm going to cut in. Probably gonna have to cut more than that. Yeah. Basically, you want to cut maybe at an angle. But basically, you want to cut where that fold is so that things sit better. So once you have your cut, you could even see what that looks like. So yeah, we cut just at that 1 inch line to 1 inch. So if you were to make this 1 inch line all the way up, you'd want to start at that 1 inch and cut to that 1 inch, which is what I was thinking in my head, but you never know. I almost said it's always nice to double or second guess yourself. Okay, so for this one, I'll know to just cut across that angle. And we're going to align the raw edge of the binding panel down one side of the edge, clipping in place, and sewing with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then fold the edge of the binding to cover the raw edge of the bag, and then baste it into place at 1/8 of an inch. And you're going to have to like fold the corners as shown. I was like held it up. No, look at the pattern. Don't look at me, look at the pattern. Fold the corners as shown, and while sewing, stop sewing once you get to the corner, leave your needle in the corner, turn it a 90 degree. Yeah. So basically similarly to how I did the exterior, but now we're going to be adding the bulk of the binding. So I feel pretty confident that this is going to stay the way I need it to stay. So I'm going to go ahead and tape the other one now. So that it's done. And then when you are cutting that 90 degree angle or the 45 degree angle, make sure you're cutting it off of each side. The same side, I should say. Mirror, not, well, yeah, just do it on the same side, okay? Okay. And I am using the double-sided tape from Weft and Warp Co. that I have available on my website. I enjoy using it because I find it to be a really nice hold without being too much hold. Like the Walk tape, I feel like sometimes it's just like, it's too much. And it can leave your needle gummy. I have not had that issue. With the double-sided tape from Walk, oh my gosh, I just did the wrong tape side. Yeah, because I'm not dealing with that side right now. Oh, Lord. Please let me sleep someday. I don't think it's going to matter. It probably will. Let's just see what happens, okay? No, I can't do that. That's fine. I'll tape the other side too. I knew I was going to make this like more difficult than it needed to be, so I did not disappoint. If you are worried about your vinyl holding up over time or fraying, you can use a little bit of fray check or glue on that corner, or even edge coat it, or just cut it in a way that it won't show. Okay, let's do this. Okay, so I think we're gonna start with, yeah, you start with this on the gusset side. Line up that top edge. And so I used a mid-weight Luxe vinyl and a regular Luxe vinyl, and I think mid-weight for the whole bag, like this gusset, is really thick. It's a 1mm thick vinyl, so I would say try to use a thinner vinyl if possible. Okay, and then we'll line up the top edge and just kind of split the difference, because right now my binding is like 1 inch off, but I do think you want it kind of tight along that panel. So I'm just going to kind of even out the stretch that I'm having to do. Okay. And this is another area I like to use a machine screwdriver, so I can use my finger to just kind of guide that. And we get to do this twice, technically 4 times, because you do it once, flip it, top stitch, and then yeah, again and again. And this is a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I am going to start like 1/8 of an inch from the top edge and back stitch. And then we'll just keep going around, following that edge as close as we can. Keep in mind you're sewing through quite a bit of vinyl, double-sided tape. Sewing down the corner. There's quite a bit of bulk. Get as close as we can, leave our needle in and pivot. And then push the rest out of the way if you can. I would not try this on anything but a domestic, no, industrial. Okay. Okay, leave your needle in, pivot. And continue on. And I will say the pattern does say to use thinner materials. This would look super cute with cotton fabric too, honestly. Okay. Did it. And you can tie your threads if you would like. And then we're gonna have some fun. Luckily, I've already taped it, but this is gonna get wrapped around the other corner. I don't know if you would want to trim that, but I think I'm gonna. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm just gonna kind of like, just give that, maybe I'll just snip it. Just to give it some relief. Just be careful when you're snipping. Yeah, I'm just gonna cut out a little notch. Oh, cool, I broke that nail too. Great, love it. Anyway, so we're gonna be wrapping this around. And over that existing stitch line. I don't think you would need to trim down your seams. But yeah, it's pretty thick at the top. And then at these corners is where you want to push it in one direction, push up in the other, and clip it. Yeah, my top panel is super, super thick, and that's because of the way the pattern has you fold things one way and then fold it another. And I feel like you could potentially just put like right sides together and sew it that way and then flip it maybe in top stitch, and that would reduce bulk, but depending on your materials, you kind of want that bulk. Either way, it's super cute. All right, let's do it. I'll go ahead and switch the camera angle. All right, and this is where, again, is a good idea to have a stiletto or a screwdriver to help you just kind of guide you through those layers. And I can push this corner down without risking my fingers. And you can see my foot is wanting to catch underneath that. So we just want to lift up before we get there. Pivot with the needle down. And turn. So my stitching on this side is like right in the ditch for most of it, but I'm okay with it. Like, it's not the eye-catching front part of the bag. So like, if you're worried about that, I would say maybe trim your seam allowances down by a teeny tiny little bit, and that would help you not stitch in the ditch essentially, or just keep an eye on your seam allowances a little bit better than I did. I was worried more about my top stitch than watching to make sure that I was under a 3/8 inch seam allowance, but that is a thing. Okay. And then I just tied my stitches here. I'll just melt that. Like, I'm really not mad about my corners though. I don't feel like they look too bad. Okay, this may not be exactly how I want to do this, but it's how I'm doing it. Okay. Well, it's finished. Just kidding. we still have this to do. I wonder how it would look with just regular old binding. I don't know that I would do it though. Okay, so from this angle, here's what I'm going to do. I want to line up with that top edge there and clip to about here. And then I'm going to lay it in a U shape, come around to the other side, and oh, wait, no. No, this goes on the gusset first. Oh, dang. It's going to be interesting. Okay. So I know we're going to start with this side. So see how if you just kind of lay it as it is, you come up short? That's because you want it to be a bit tighter. So I'm going to clip it up here at the top and lay it in place. And then clip it around the bottom. And then I'm pinching it together at the corners. But that's going to help give it that fun shape. All right. I'm just going to grab a secondary bobbin, have it on deck. And this is going to be about a 3/8. I would want to do just slightly under because I know my vinyls are thicker, but I've already done 3/8 on the other side, so I'm just going to keep it consistent. And then somebody asked where I get all the magnets on my machine. These are all available on my website actually, but you could turn anything into a magnet. You just glue a really strong magnet to the back, and then you've got a fun little set of tools right at your fingertips. Okay. In one direction, pivot. And you want to make sure that your needle is as far down as it can go. Otherwise, you could end up actually breaking a needle trying to do this. And I might, because this is really thick. And one of the biggest tricks to preventing breaking a needle, at least for an industrial, is to know the sounds your machine makes and where the foot should go in correlation to the needle. So I know not to backstitch too fast on a bulky seam because your needle could be not quite there yet and it could break, basically. So just go slow as you're working your way over all of that. And I've been using a stitch length of 5 actually, like throughout this entire bag. Oh no, when? I literally said it too. Luckily I hadn't gone far. Woo! Caught it. I caught it. Thick thighs for the win. Okay, so I'm going to bring it up my bobbin thread. And then so that I don't have to cut from where I was, I just have all of the tension released on my discs and pull on my top thread. Make sure it's not caught on anything before I get started to sew that again. A seam so nice, I shall do it twice. And then see how I did not go quite all the way to the top there. Left a little bit. You want to leave as much as is relevant to as close as you losing your ish. That's me on any given day. Okay, and then again. Ooh, look at those skip stitches. Oh Lord. That's okay. So yeah, I'm just doing a quick snip to break down that bulk. Especially if I can see it. There we go. Like, it's a bit of a pucker, but it's okay. I could see this being really, really easy using the accessory weight vinyls on my website, like mid-weight to accessory weight. But our standard luxe vinyls, I don't know that I would try again with these. I don't know that I would try this pattern with these materials, or with this purple vinyl, I should say. Everything else would be really good. But the amount of layers with that purple vinyl is just, whew, there's a lot. Luckily the accessory, or the midweight printed luxe has a bit of give to it, honestly. So that's nice. Okay, let's look at our other corner. Looks like we went up, down, and then up to make our corner. Down and then up. Highly recommend doing that little snip to your corner. It'll just make them that much more defined. Okay. Oh. Oh, okay. I was like, why is it so deformed looking? Oh my gosh. It is so cute. Okay, we gotta sew it. All the deep breaths. All right. I'm pulling plenty of thread to start so I can make sure I'm holding on as I'm top stitching. I wouldn't say this would be easier necessarily with a cylinder arm, but I, again, have had this machine for 7 years. We've done everything together. So I usually just make it work. Ooh, again, I'm not paying attention to my seam allowance, but I should. I'm paying attention to my top stitch seam allowance, not the plate labeled seam allowance. Oh my gosh, I just want to make this in like a quilting cotton now and just go, ah, that was easy. Okay, so you can see my foot here getting caught. Keep an eye on that. We're going to pivot and continue on. Okay. Got a little better at seeing my top stitch, but oof, them corners. Oof. Again, like this bag is so pretty overall that I don't think it's super noticeable. And then especially if you added that like webbing accent as listed in the pattern, that would be insanely cute too. Let's get a better look. It's so cute. So this is inspired by the Dior book tote. You can see there. I would say this looks pretty good. Oh, then I saw that corner and then I thought maybe not. But the structure of this is really cool. I love that we don't have to turn this bag, and like I could see this being very trendy, especially if you added like a cute like a jelly chain. I know some websites sell chains like that. It holds a good amount, even unsnapped. Like it sits pretty cute. Mine's kind of buckling in a bit, but I know if it had the rolled handles, it would look even better. Had the scarf, had like the webbing stripes. It's just up in here that it's a bit bulky, so maybe on your gusset, use a bit thinner of a material too. Oh, look at that corner. That's pretty bad. I'm trying to think what could help in the corners. I mean, if you wanted to round the corners and maybe shorten your gusset by an inch, that would be a possibility too. You could keep your binding similar and then make it look like square corners, possibly. But I do think the pattern is super cute as written. I love the way the handles come together. There's a ton of structure in this bag, and I really enjoyed making it. So I would love to know if you check out all of the designer patterns from Tobi Stylx, and I will see you all later. Bye.